It's great to be with you here virtually to discuss these very two important planning documents for our city. This is an exciting opportunity to talk about our long-term vision and goals for the City of Winnipeg and the kind of communities we want to build for the future. As elected leaders of Winnipeg, it's important we come together to discuss what a complete community means to our constituents. This discussion and these documents will help inform our future policies to build a city that is diverse, sustainable, equitable, and inclusive. I'd like to take most of my time today to speak to the Complete Communities 2.0 draft. This guiding document for our city as it stands right now is quite simply status quo. My honest and candid opinion, we are not building a city for the future with this draft. For years, we have seen how sprawl directly impacts and erodes the quality of our city services. This current plan will continue to lead us down that road, figuratively and literally. People living in central neighborhoods continue to subsidize new infrastructure for a sprawling city development with increased property taxes while continuing to receive reduced city services. This approach continued towards infill development is not sustainable development for Winnipeg. Economically, socially, and environmentally, after 10 years of falling further and further behind on potential tax revenues, we continue to build a larger city footprint that we cannot afford to build, service, or maintain. This is not acceptable as a long-term plan for our city, especially in a time of COVID, where inequities further cement our economic and social divides. We have to make the bold choices now to invest and shape a new city for the future. As leaders of this city, I ask you to consider the data to develop a responsible plan to grow and develop our city for the future. Together, let's set a progressive goal in Winnipeg targeting 70% in infill and 30% in greenfield development. Our current rate of 50% will continue to deteriorate our central neighborhoods. We can see that we are on the wrong path. Let's work smarter, not harder, to build homes and infrastructure for our city. I spoke with Johanna Hermy, internationally renowned architect and former chair of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, who recently spoke in delegation during last month's PPND committee. Her research outlined some really good key points. Nearly 75% of Winnipeg's annual $1.1 billion budget is dedicated to infrastructure maintenance and municipal service deliveries. All of these services are directly linked to the physical distance between points. A more compact city provides better services for less money. In other words, the more growth we develop in downtown, mature communities, along established infrastructure routes, or near existing community services, we save money in the City of Winnipeg's bottom line. Halifax recently calculated that their annual service cost per household is $1,416 for an urban dwelling versus $3,462 for a suburban household, representing a savings of over $2,000 a year. The city anticipates the need to build 80,000 new residences over the next 25 years. Assuming the services and figures from Halifax are comparable to Winnipeg, if we directed this growth into urban areas, we could potentially see a savings of $4 billion. Just to be clear, when we build our city out, we all continue to pay. We must acknowledge the true impact of these new roads on our city, including air pollution, climate change emissions, noise, delay from traffic congestions, and losses and injury from collisions. Our practices and policies continue to subsidize and perpetuate the high civic costs of automobile use. We understand the full impact and complexity of sprawl-focused development. Research supports that curbing sprawl and supporting infill growth offers an abundance of benefits to our communities, such as raising livability standards, environmental sustainability, supports the mental and physical well-being of citizens, and of course, a host of financial advantages to the community as a whole. Next, I'd like to speak about an issue that has recently come to light over the last few months. I'd like to take this opportunity to share my knowledge with my fellow EPC members on equitable placemaking as it relates to its current draft with respect to crime prevention through environmental design, also known as CEPTED. Within the Complete Communities 2.0 draft, there are several sections that refer to the use of CEPTED. I found myself thinking back to the principles explained to us in the recent community engagement workshop led by Ms. Jay Pitter. And some of my council colleagues, Councillor Rowlands and Gilroy, attended these workshops, as well as some representatives from our public administration and the Property Planning and Development Department. Jay Pitter is a North American leader in equity-based placemaking. She emphasizes that urban design is not neutral. It either perpetuates or reduces social inequalities. Current CEPTED principles are intended to create a safer, more welcoming, and more accessible public realm. But you need to ask yourself, for whom? The creation of CEPTED agenda gave birth to hostile architecture, a detrimental form of urban exclusionism. The philosophies of CEPTED and hostile architecture have led to the alarming erasure of free public space, rendered public spaces unusable to undesirable citizens, to erase images of poverty, social decay, and public disorder. The CEPTED philosophy endangers the very nature of diversity in urban environments and brings into question whether public spaces are truly free and democratic. Through our education with Ms. Pitter, we learned that CEPTED is a design philosophy that turns neighborhoods into mazes of defensible space that often unconsciously criminalizes and further marginalizes Black, Indigenous, and people of color under the guise of safety. Under CEPTED standards, spaces for marginalized groups are designed with fewer amenities and fewer green spaces. I am very concerned about the continued emphasis of CEPTED tactics used in our city building documents. It is an old school philosophy that alienates BIPOC people in the public realm, as opposed to designing spaces to build up and support healthy communities. If CEPTED is based on the premises that the built environment affects behavior, what behaviors are we anticipating in our neighborhoods designed with CEPTED? How do our own implicit biases, unconscious thoughts, and stereotypes influence how we design our neighborhoods? Think about it. What does eyes on the street mean to you? Is it the surveillance of people? Or is it the building up of community spaces to encourage the presence of people for safer spaces? In my ward, which is over 70% visible minorities, we see different design standards with the intention of crime prevention. The North End has a complete lack of public spaces in an effort to prevent crime. Under CEPTED guidelines, we have created spaces that de-incentivize people on our streets. CEPTED reduces shrubs and tree plantings in my ward because greenery is sacrificed for sightlines. CEPTED also reduces benches to sit on to limit loitering. Point Douglas Ward regularly sees the removal of benches with intention to build a safer neighborhood. This is a prime example of elitism, which begs the question that we only have benches so that certain people can sit there. Individuals from underrepresented backgrounds deserve a better city that lifts them up and not further oppresses them. If we take a moment to view CEPTED through our colonial lens, we can see that it fails to let certain communities congregate without fear of harassment. If we want to reduce crime, we have to look at the root causes. We should not be designing our city assuming the worst of people, denying them the opportunity for social inclusion, connections in a beautiful and livable neighborhood. I ask that we examine the specific CEPTED recommendations in this draft to ensure that we are creating equitable guidelines to build healthy, thriving neighborhoods. In 2021, we cannot continue to build our city in a system derived from structural racism. When we know better, we can do better. To wrap up, we need a modern playbook for this city. While I do see some great goals and comments in this document, there are some areas where I believe we must raise our targets and goals to move us toward a more equitable, sustainable, diverse, and inclusive city. If we want to build a thriving Winnipeg for future generations to work, play, and live, this document has to be bolder to take us there. I've emailed the clerk my amending suggestions for your consideration, and I greatly appreciate your time.